Welcome to the first Tempo Storm Wild Meta Snapshot Breakdown in the Year of the Dragon. While Wild doesn't benefit from the rotation, the Year of the Dragon still throws new cards in the mix. New decks have found their way onto the tier list, but the overall meta hasn't changed. Rise of Shadows didn't feature that many powerful cards, which means the expansion will struggle to compete with the power level of existing decks in Wild. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel in order to keep up with our Hearthstone content. Now let's jump right into Tier 1 and see what decks are leading the meta. Odd Paladin is the best of the best, and this Baku train doesn't seem to stop. The deck rose to power in order to answer Kingsbane rogues and now shows its true powerhouse strength. Now Odd Paladin has an easier time getting through removal spells thanks to Never Surrender. If you're looking to beat Odd Paladin in Wild, play a deck with tons of removal like Odd Warrior. The other Tier 1 deck is Kingsbane Rogue. This deck was the best deck in Wild, but has since been dethroned by Odd Paladin. It's common to see the best deck shift around within a meta as players develop counters. Kingsbane Rogue's best matchups are against slow but greedy decks like Big Priest. The Rogue puts on too much pressure, and when Rogues tech in silence abilities, Priests struggle even more. Aside from Odd Paladin, Kingsbane Rogue has a hard time with other aggressive decks like Even or Murloc Shaman. When a new expansion releases, you can always expect new decks. Wild has less new competitive archetypes, but a few have slipped through the cracks and found their way into the tier list. One of the better decks to appear with the Rise of Shadows was Silent Priest. This new expansion gifted Silent Priest another large minion with Arcane Watcher, and also brought it new ways to silence its own board. With these new tools, Silent Priest has been beating its way into the tier list and finds itself in Tier 2. While more fun than competitive, Quest Mage has been performing well on ladder and can be rewarding to play. Thanks to the new ways Mage can generate random spells and the additional freezes Mage has been given, Quest Mage is once again viable. The deck cycles, stalls the game out, and secures a win with large minions. Sadly, a lot of the top tier decks are too fast and kill the Mage before it assembles its combo pieces. Tier 2 is larger than the first tier in this snapshot. Many of these decks are powerful, but they all fall a bit short of the strength that the Tier 1 decks have. Let's take a look. Leading Tier 2 in this snapshot is Big Priest. This deck is notorious due to Barnes. Big Priest received several new tools with Rise of Shadows, but surprisingly, Archmage Vargoth has the most impact. In both Standard and Wild, this card has proven to be a powerful tool in Resurrect-based Priest lists. Players are still experimenting with different variations, but these cards are core to every list. Big Priest bullies slower decks that can't deal with the endless waves of large minions. Decks like Even Warlock or Odd Warrior might be able to get through a few of the boards, but will eventually succumb to the Priest's threats. Big Priest has a lot of favorable matchups and can even cheese out wins in its unfavored ones. On that note, the inevitability of Kingsbane Rogue and Mind Blast Priest can make these matchups feel almost unwinnable. Both decks remove threats without killing minions, making the Priest's resurrect effects useless. Following Big Priest is a new face to the second tier, Jade Druid. Previously found in Tier 3, Jade Druid has risen in power with Rise of Shadows. Jade Druid has begun to abuse Archmage Vargoth and Hecklebot. Both of these cards synergize with Oaken Summons and are natural fits for the deck. Jade Druid also got a huge boost because of Odd Paladin's popularity. Aside from Odd Warrior, this is Jade Druid's best matchup. As for bad matchups, Jade Druid struggles with decks that can apply a lot of pressure in the early stages of the game. Large minions can be problematic for Druid, as they have limited removal. The last deck we'll look at in this tier is an entirely new archetype, Darkest Hour Warlock. As the name suggests, this deck is built around the Rise of Shadows card, Darkest Hour. This deck really wasn't theory crafted prior to the expansion's release, and it took the Wild metagame by storm. The goal of the deck is to fill your board with tokens, and then combo Bloodbloom and Darkest Hour. Players can pull huge minions from their deck, assembling a threatening board out of nowhere. This deck feels a lot like Giant's Warlock. Darkest Hour decks have recently added Nerubian Unraveler to prevent their opponents from using spells to deal with their combo. This Warlock archetype takes advantage of slow decks with expensive removal. Decks like Even Warlock can't deal with these boards and rely on applying their own pressure to win. Darkest Hour Warlock struggles against decks that can take over the game quickly, ending the game before the Warlock's swing turn. A good example of this is Murloc Shaman. The pressure they apply in the first few turns is lethal. To gain a competitive advantage in this meta, you should look to target both of the Tier 1 decks. Not many decks can beat both Odd Paladin and Kingsbane Rogue, so your choices are limited. Currently, it seems like the best two decks for this are Murloc Shaman and Aggro Druid. Both of these archetypes have similar playstyles, applying relentless pressure and ignoring most of what other decks summon. If needed though, both of these decks can fight for board, as they have several ways to buff their own minions for value trades. Both of these decks are viable choices for countering the current meta, so try them both out. Let us know how they do for you. The Wild meta has changed quite a bit with Rise of Shadows and will continue to develop. Only time will tell which decks take tier 1. Thanks for watching our Wild Meta Snapshot Breakdown. We hope this video has helped you gain a better understanding of the best decks in the Wild format. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more. Have a great week.